purposes to bring about his redemption and restoration on earth. And it's not always going to be straightforward. There's bad decisions along the way by humanity, not God. Sometimes there's a lack of trust. There's suffering. There's questions. There's people making mistakes. Sounds a bit like our current lives as well. You know, we go through these things. Life is not always straight sailing. It doesn't always just go so smoothly to plan. We're actually not that far off some of the problems that the ancient people of the Bible went through. You know, when we were in the Kimberley, we were at a place near on the Fitzroy River. And this was meant to be a place that did not have saltwater crocodiles. And we were swimming in the river, or most of us were, I was not. And Stephen spotted a saltwater crocodile not too far away. Everybody got out very quickly and were a fair way off the bank, and we were watching this crocodile. But one of the other people on the property, like one of the other people that actually lived there and owned the property, was on the other side of the river, as that was their quickest spot to hop out. And they had two Jack Russell pets. One was the mum and one was the pup. And of course these dogs jumped into the river because they wanted to get to the owner on the other side. And we watched on, and one was taken. Now, it was traumatic, and it was sad and horrible, and we were all devastated. And the family that was there and the other people that we were with, they knew that it wasn't so long ago that our family had already experienced a bad thing happening around water, and they were doubly devastated that this happened for us. Now, not knowing what to really say to the owner, as people were not in a great place, I said, trying to make him feel a little better, I said, everything happens for a reason. And as soon as that came out of my mouth, I was like, actually, that's a load of rubbish. I don't actually really believe that. But what I do believe is everything that we go through, God uses, and he can use for good, and he does. And to me, there's quite a difference in that statement. Nothing in our life is wasted with God, and he can use our life and use our life experiences for good. So we're looking at the book of Exodus, and the current king, whose title is Pharaoh, is fearful of the Israelites. As they grow and they flourish, there's obvious favor upon them, and so he oppresses them heavily and tries to wipe them out, and decrees for the male babies to be thrown into the Nile River. And we come to chapter 2, which is our passage today, and I encourage you to read that at home or follow on and have a look at it if you have your Bible with you. There's a Levite man and a woman who have a baby, and they hide him for 3 months, and then they make a basket and make it waterproof and place this baby in the basket and pop it in the Nile River. His sister watches on and follows this baby in the river, and it is found by the daughter of Pharaoh, who wants to keep him. So a wet nurse is found to be able to feed the baby, which is the actual mother of Moses, and he's raised in the palace, and he's given the name Moses, as that name sounded like the Hebrew word for to draw out, because he was drawn out from the water. Now, I don't know what Moses' mother would have thought when her baby was put in the river. She obviously was hopeful for his life as she made this waterproof basket. She didn't just toss him in. There was hope for his life, and his sister watched on to see what would happen. I don't know if they were sure that that's exactly where he was going to go and head down to the palace. I would have thought that wouldn't have been such a great idea, since there was a decree for all the Hebrew baby boys to be killed, and that would not have been a safe place. But he's placed in the Nile. The Nile is the life source of Egypt, the river that runs through there and gives them life with the river. It's also the place that Pharaoh intended for death. It's where he said for death to occur. And it's also, this river is where Moses is given a new life. It's sounding a little redemption-like, even baptism-like. These words and these themes, they're not random, and God is weaving through the story his goodness during this time of evil and oppression. You know, the very next verse, verse 11, just shifts to he's all grown up. The Bible seemed to miss the Prince of Egypt movie. A whole heap happened in that movie between there and he just grew up. And I only remember, I think it was a horse race, but it's been many years since I've seen it. But the Bible says he grew up. And we have this story of him going to his own people. So he knows he is a Hebrew man, and he sees one of his people being beaten up by an Egyptian, and he turns upon this Egyptian person and he kills them. The next day it pains him to see his people are fighting amongst themselves. And they use his actions against him. And they say, "Are you going to kill us as well?" For him intervening. And so it becomes apparent to him that people actually know that he murdered the Egyptian. Now, the Hebrew people, they're in a bad state. They are oppressed and they're turning on one another. Maybe they're finding Moses' privilege of his upbringing in the palace a little repulsive, rather than seeing the potential in him to actually aid them. Moses then, he flees. He flees to start a new life. Not only did the Hebrew people not want him, Pharaoh is actually out to kill him also. And he passes Mount Sinai and he starts a life in Midian. And he becomes a shepherd. And he marries. And he starts a family in this foreign land, obviously feeling a little displaced, as the name of his firstborn child was Gershom, saying, "I have become an alien in a foreign land." And then we read verse 23. During the long period the king of Egypt died, the Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out. And their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned for them. God remembered. It's a funny saying, isn't it? Because the opposite is, are we saying that God forgets? No, it's not quite the same as how we use it. God remembers, he's very aware of his covenant, and now he mentions it, and now he will respond. There's another time earlier in Genesis, the same line. God remembered. Who did he remember? He remembered Noah. Remember, out in the boat, and God remembered. It's in Genesis chapter 8. And then he sent a wind, ruach, over the earth, and the waters began to subside. We're going to see more of this as we continue this Exodus story. But God remembers his promise to Abraham. He remembers that promise. He said, "I will bless those that bless you. I will curse those that curse you." That is what he said to Abraham. They are oppressed. They are cursed. And then it said that he was concerned for them. A better translation is actually that he noticed them, that he knew. He knew. He knows what's happening. He knows what's happening in your life. And what does he do? How does he choose to honor this covenant? He chooses to work through a person, to work through people and to humans. Sometimes we wonder if that was a good idea. Or perhaps we can see that this is actually love and this is relationship, which is what God has with his people. You know, the midwives that we looked at last week in chapter 1, they were obedient. They were obedient to God. They didn't kill the babies. You know, God's goodness worked through the people. God's goodness worked through those midwives. And we know in the next chapter, in chapter 3, that he's going to work through Moses to bring about his purposes for his people. And that's next week's story. But this week we see this early life of Moses. We see the preparation. You know, he's born from the priestly line. He's placed in a river, with the most likely outcome would have been to die. He comes out of the water, but for new life. And he's rescued by the enemy's daughter and raised in the palace. He's killed a man. He's not wanted by his people. He's threatened death by his family that raised him. And he's on the run. He's now an alien in a foreign country, in a foreign land, with nowhere that he can actually call a true home that he belongs to. And he now learns the way of the land, and he learns shepherding and raising a family. We can see how amazing all these things are as preparation for the rest of the story. His upbringing and being brought up in the palace would have had to have helped him as he had to approach the Pharaoh later. You know, how the story is about when he murders that Egyptian, he didn't seem to be very proud of it. I'd say it grew some humility in him. He experienced displacement, character building, all the skills he learnt by living on the land and not just a palace. Imagine what that brought as he was in the wilderness with the people. Moses is to be used by God to respond to the cries and the groans of the Hebrew people. You know, pretty much most of the Old Testament and the New, for that matter, characters are clear examples of how God uses people whose hearts will respond, but they're not perfect. He's not looking for squeaky clean life, if there is such a thing. But there was one, and that is the complete game changer for you and me. It's Jesus. You know, who looks at their life and thinks, yeah, this is exactly how I thought my life would be? No one's nodding. We all have disappointments. We all have great things that we wouldn't have imagined either. There may be certain failures that are just staring you in the face. If you're younger, maybe you're hoping like crazy that every decision that you're going to make will be the right one, because you don't want to stuff it all up. Maybe we're watching children or grandchildren around us and we're worrying about what's happening in their lives. But I want to encourage you. Moses got some stuff wrong. His life was pretty messy, just like all the Old Testament characters. Yet God uses him and all those experiences of his life for good. His life so far is a total preparation of what is to come. But there's no way he would have seen that at the time. We don't see it while we're in it. But nothing goes to waste with God in your life. And he can cause all the experiences in your life for good. Now, God didn't want that dog to be eaten by a crocodile in front of us. God doesn't want to bring about the hard things in your life to teach you a lesson, but he will use them. And he will use them for good. You know, that incident did help me to give up some of my why questions that I was battling with at the time to life and death, and just accept the natural consequences of living in a world that is not yet fully restored. There's a risk when you swim in a river up north. You and all your experiences here on earth are building you. They are growing you for his purposes here on earth. And we know that for all those who love God, all things work together for good. For those who are called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. Then Peter reminds us in his letter of this calling. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood. You are a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. 1 Peter 2, verse 9. You are chosen. You are his. You have purpose. You are blessed. He blessed Abraham and his people, those generations, to be a blessing to all the nations, and he blesses you to bless others. It's how it works. You are his child. You are part of the family of God to bless those around you. Nothing in your life is wasted. Nothing in the lives of those that you love around you, that you watch on, is wasted. God transforms. God renews. God restores. God draws us to himself. God heals. God gives life. He gives new life. He gives refreshment. Nothing is too much for God, and nowhere is too far away for God. So don't lose hope. Don't lose hope for the lives of those around you that you are watching on, that you love and you care for. Don't lose hope for your own life. God will use your life. In 2 Corinthians, it says that we were hard pressed, but we're not crushed. struck down but not destroyed. We carry Jesus. We carry Jesus' death so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed. And Jesus breathes life on your circumstances today. And He has prepared you for tomorrow. I want us to give us the opportunity just to receive a blessing today. And I've actually asked Alan and Dillis if they would do that.